Very warm welcome to the programme, as ever, on a Thursday night sporting chat for the best part of an hour. Normally, the sporting chat involves 2 or 3 people. We're going to overburden one person tonight because there were supposed to be 4 of us. I've only got the one guest here this evening, but if you've ever listened to him, seen him on television, you'll know that he can fill good portions of time, and he does regularly on Saturdays even now, even though he's a former manager at this point in time, a former top player as well, and somebody that I've enjoyed writing a book with, among other things. Brian Laws, it's good to see you again,
and
Brian.
You,
and thank you, and a good job you turned up. That's all I can say, because
I like to fill the seat. I can fill it.
Absolutely, spreading out.
I am spreading out.
A lot of my guests are spreading out at this time of their lives, and dare I say, so is the presenter. First of all, apologies to supporters, and there are many, and they deserve many more, of Sheffield Ladies Football Club. We were due to have Carla Ward, the captain, with us in the studio. Very sadly, she's gone down ill today. Nothing too serious, I hope, but best wishes for a quick recovery, Carla, and I'll be in touch to rearrange your visit to the studio. And we'll hear about their season, because they done remarkably well. First season in the FA Women's Super League, and in Super League 2 finished 5th in the table. Which
is remarkable, isn't it? It shows you how powerful women's football has now come on.
It's
amazing. You know, been following it the last few years and seeing the increasing spectators that have been following ladies football, and it's now they're getting on television areas now within Sky, and it's become very, very popular, and you know, and some of them are fantastic players. It's brilliant to watch.
Yeah, it is. I went to see a game quite recently involving Sheffield. Fantastic standard, really, really good. And I mean, we used to be accused of being patronising about it. There's no patronising to say that it's a very, very good standard indeed.
No, it is.
You have to be careful, don't you? Because people do mistake what fellas say about women's football. They really do get the wrong ideas sometimes.
Absolutely, and they take it as sarcasm rather than anything else. But it isn't. It actually is. It's quite true that I've been very impressed, and I mean, even I'd seen recently a few games on television, and it hasn't put me off, thinking, it's just because it's women play. I actually quite enjoy watching it.
Yeah, me too. And we look forward to hearing more about Sheffield Ladies' achievement from Carla Ward. James Gregg, who would normally be here to round up everything else, he's otherwise gainfully employed. He's found a better gig. He'll be back next week.
Is it me? Do I smell?
Well, not only that, I ricked my back, tore a back muscle this week, and I'm sponsored on the show this week. I'm sponsored by my daughter, actually, without whom I wouldn't be sitting here with socks and shoes on, because I can't bend down to put socks and shoes on. And by the way, Isabel, you're going to have to take them off tonight as well when I get back home. And Brian, now this is a bit more seriously, has a health warning for us, because he's a fit and healthy chap. I've known him for many years. He looks in absolute prime condition. You would never have known that you recently had a very major operation.
Yeah. It's the first time I've actually talked about it. I've kept it quite quiet, but in June this year, unknown to me, I wasn't expecting it, ended up with a double heart bypass, which from my point of view, from a sporting point of view, it's just total shock. Wasn't expecting anything, and took me by surprise, and we only really found out by fluke rather than anything else, which, probably because of my fitness over the years, has disguised probably the true depth of it all. But thankfully, a friend of mine who is a doctor, and when I talked to him about what I thought was having, heartburn, the only thing that I talked about heartburn with my doctor was because I've never suffered with heartburn before.
No.
So that was my only sort of sign. It only lasted a few minutes, and yet he felt that there was something more sinister than that, and wanted to do all these tests, and I ended up doing ECGs, and they come clear. There was nothing on that. I had a scan, there was nothing on it, bloods and everything, so I felt pretty good. But he still wasn't convinced, which it was bizarre thing to say. He said, "I'm still not convinced. I think there's something more what we need to, discuss." And he ended up saying, really, to cut a long story short, you have to have an angiogram really to find out the true aspect of it all.
Okay, well, that sets the scene. We'll come back to Brian a little bit later in the programme, because there is something very serious underlying this. I mean, I saw Brian late last season, because you cover games for Radio Sheffield and at Nottingham Forest for the radio station there. And I'd seen you then, and I saw you early season at Hillsborough looking in prime form. And I was absolutely stunned to hear that in between you'd had this heart surgery. And we can talk later about how much football management may have affected you in terms of that, but also perhaps a warning to everybody out there about the signs to look for. But it's great to see and looking so well. We'll talk a bit about Sheffield Wednesday, going through a bit of a rough patch at the moment, slightly sticky patch, but just briefly Sheffield United before we go on to there.
Do I have to?
It's a condition. You signed the contract.
All right, if I have to talk about them,
Okay, Chris Wilder.
Yeah.
What do you know of him? Have you come across him over the years?
Lots of times, Chris. I mean, Chris is it's probably his dream job, I have to say. And I spoke to him when he was at Northampton, doing a terrific job there. And I've actually met him in Sheffield at one of the dinners. So I was on his table, we were having a good chat. There was nothing about Sheffield United in the air, but he always talks about Sheffield United with passion. And to get the job that he's probably always wanted is a dream come true for him. And it's, it hadn't worked out. It hadn't, he was going to hopefully hit the ground running. Yeah. But Sheffield United aren't going to allow you to do that. No. And certainly at the start of the season, he found it difficult to get his first wins under his belt. But since then, they're really look unstoppable at the moment, and that's great credit to his beliefs and to the team, and they're all working hard, which is sounds really crazy to say, but they do look as though they're really up for the cause, and they're in for a fight, and they're certainly going to push what I think is probably Scunthorpe all the way.
Where you still live, where I still manage.
Exactly, yes, and again another football club that is doing remarkably well. However, it's not surprising, because the finances that they now have in place at Scunthorpe is very good. The chairman is very, very thirsty for success. Peter Swan, and he has the money and he's prepared to spend it, and their wage bill is probably up there with the best. So it doesn't surprise me. They've got a fantastic squad of players, and they've been gelling over the last 2 or 3 years. And it hasn't surprised me that they're top of the division. Okay,
you saw it coming. Graham Alexander, outstanding success so far. So not put a foot wrong. I mean, at home, I think he's only dropped a couple of points, hasn't he?
He has. I mean, he came in at the later stages of last season. And again, speaking to Graham, I know Graham very well. I had him at Burnley as a player. Right. And he was a former player of Scunthorpe as well in his younger days. And Graham's a real student of the game. And the one thing that when I had him as a player, fantastic pro, probably one of my best pros I've worked with, in the way he conducted himself, and there's no surprise that he played till he's 40, because he kept himself fit. He did all the right things that you would expect, and from a young player looking at a senior player, he was fantastic. He was right up there, and again, even when he was in his late 30s, he was still practicing things which, normally they'd be jogging off the training ground as quick as they come. But
I bet he never had to practice penalties. Yeah. Every single one he used to put. Didn't he have a 100% record? Yeah.
But well, let me tell you. After every training session, he did practice. He took a bag of balls, and he just had to spend half an hour every training session, every time, and he just wanted to do it on his own, and he'd just be smashing it into the. No goalkeepers in, just hitting the back of the net. Right. So
you do it without goalkeepers. Yeah. Well, that's the way I'd take a penalty.
Well, if I want a penalty, I don't want a goalkeeper in, because he'll save it.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about Ched Evans later, because you can't talk about Chesterfield versus Sheffield United without discussing Ched Evans. We'll perhaps do that in the second part of the show. But Sheffield Wednesday, you are an Owls fan. Yeah. Absolutely. When he got the job at Wednesday, I don't think people actually realised the background, did they? No, the family background.
The family background is very strong. My wife is well, and still is a massive Sheffield Wednesday fan, and. Her dad is, a brother, So all the family are.
Yeah.
And when we've eventually taken over at Sheffield Wednesday as a manager, it just encapsulated it all.
Yeah.
My son, who was born was at Sheffield Wednesday, he's an owl.
Yeah.
He loves wearing the kit.
How old is he now?
He's 7.
Right.
And he wants to. He follows me to the games. He wants me to go take him to the games. That's his team, Sheffield Wednesday. He's latched onto it, and I'm not forcing him into it. He just loves it. In fact, we're watching the England versus Scotland game tomorrow, and the one thing that he says is he wants Scotland to win.
Because of Fletcher.
Fletcher and Bannon.
Yeah.
Can't believe it.
Disloyal. I'll tell you what, when you were Wednesday manager, and you were for 3 years, now you're still the longest serving managers for over 20 years, since Trevor Francis left in 1995. We talked about that before we came on air, and you were almost disbelieving of that fact.
Yeah.
But it is still the case. 3 years you were manager, up until 2009. You also managed, of course, Grimsby, Scunthorpe, Burnley and Shamrock Rovers, where you enjoyed the Guinness, but not a lot else. But when you were Wednesday manager and you returned home to a wife who supported the Owls and everything, the whole family, you could never get away from it. No. I mean, this is what causes the double heart bypass surgery,
Probably.
surely.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is she's got a good understanding about football as well, and she's followed me all the way through. So I think we just enjoyed it and enjoyed it together, which was quite nice from a family's point of view. Because it's very hard when you're a manager and you're on the road, you're travelling. This is a 24-hour-a-day job. It's 7 days a week. You are constantly on the job, talking about it, ringing people, going to see people, travelling. And you have to have a very, very understanding wife, because at the end of the day,
as opposed to a husband beater when you've lost again or something.
Absolutely.
A bad spell.
Well, I was always scared to go home when we lost. That's the slowest time I've ever driven. It was when we've lost. But yeah, it is. And she's been a real rock, and to have an understanding wife like that, and a supporter as well. So she understands it as well. She understands the mechanics of it all, and she follows football. So it was an easy transition for me.
What do you make of it now then? You do see Wednesday quite regularly for BBC Radio Sheffield. Perhaps we can agree on a couple of things. A, it's not a crisis. They're only 2 points off the playoffs, despite these back-to-back defeats that have set them back. And secondly, a couple of weeks ago, Carlos Carvalhal could do very little wrong in the eyes of supporters. So let's put it into that context first of all.
It is. I mean, the last season in particular, I think he deserves some huge credit. He's put a team together last year in particular and had a fantastic end of the season. The only downside was the end part, and that was disappointing.
Absolutely. What a big opportunity, perhaps not realising what a massive opportunity, using the word advisedly. Yeah. It really was.
It was.
Missed.
It was a missed opportunity, and I think the players underperformed on that day. I don't know whether it was the occasion or whatever, but it was a pretty disappointing end. However, the chairman is very, very strong. He wants success, you can see that, and with the success that they had last year, he's only added more pressure on the manager, because you've done it once, we expect you to do it again. But this time I'm going to give you some ammunition. He's giving more players, and now the players that he's brought in, the likes of Reach and Fletcher, and have added more pressure and
to the manager,
and he's trying to find what his best 11 is. And I think you're seeing more changes this year in the team, week in, week out, than you did see last year. In fact, I could have named the team last year. This time, I'm not so sure I could name that first 11. And
it's still most of that first 11 who's produced the better results when they've had them.
Yeah, and it looks like he's trying to, I don't know whether he's reverting back to it, but that was his success. And unfortunately, these players that have come in, you're having to dismantle it a little bit. And if it doesn't quite gel, I think that has made it more difficult, because it hasn't gelled as well as it did last year.
Is it because he's trying to keep everybody happy when he's got more players, or is it because he genuinely doesn't know his best 11, or is it simply horses for courses? Which one of the three is it?
Well, I think he's very much his own man. I can see that, and he makes the changes, and he makes some strong changes when required. He's made some positive changes. The fact that he's got too much options does does come into it, and I didn't particularly like big squads because they do come with a problem, and the problem is everybody wants to play. So you're always going to be unpopular, which is what the job is. And anyway, it's down to you to pick the team, the best team, week in, week out. And you want the team to be continually being successful but consistent. Last year they had consistency, and this year they're inconsistent, which is a little bit of a surprise because the big players that were coming through last year have not quite delivered. Bannon's gone off the boil a little bit. Forestieri has gone off the boil. And it's interesting now, listening to the radio coming in tonight. Forestieri's had 10 clubs in 10 years.
Right.
Never really stayed.
No.
Now, whether it's, I don't know what it is, but he seems to have lost that drive that he had last year.
Yeah.
He's an excellent player.
Absolutely.
I think he's one of the best in the division.
Looks a lost soul at the moment. The most surprising thing with the level of ability, including him, and you've got proven goal scorer like Gary Hooper at Fletcher's an excellent striker, it's just the lack of goals, averaging just a fraction over one per game. And there's a fortnight now, or we're almost halfway through a fortnight. Do you think that Carlos will have gone away and had a major rethink perhaps about the way he's going to play the game? Because it seems to be all link play and passing, and nobody in the box and no end product to me at the moment.
Well,
just at the moment.
yeah, the one thing that was very apparent last year, and I watched a lot of and studied how they were playing, and the one thing that there seemed to be a very consistent level of delivery of balls in the box from either side, and that was very apparent last year. So therefore, they created more chances by doing that. This year, they're not crossing the ball as much as I've seen last year. It's more inside rather than the outside. Yes. Now, it could be down to two factors. First of all, the opposition who you're playing against.
They're wised up, aren't they?
And they may have sussed Wednesday out and said, well, we force them inside, they're not going to be as dangerous. And sometimes that could be, and that's where you've got to try and overcome that as well, because when the opposition starts sussing you out, it's hard to stop.
But with the fullbacks that they've got and the pace in that area, and with players like Wallace, who's been out of favour and one of several players not performing to a level, and you've got reach, you do actually have the players there to go wide and get it over.
I mean, I
think.
Yeah, I do. I think the one thing that they used to do is, as soon as they get in that area, their strikers knew that the ball was going to come in, and if they get to a certain point, the balls were coming in. You could see that even in the warm-up, they were practicing crossing, making sure that the deliveries are good, but also the players were making near-post runs, far runs, and so they had a real drive about them. But as I said, I don't see that as much in these last few games in particular. I think they've been very hard-working. I think the football they've played has been very good at a high standard, but in the last third, they've not been as clinical. It's almost chess football, where they're trying to actually walk the ball in the back of the net. It's
the Arsenal syndrome, isn't it, really? But there's no doubt, I don't know whether you agree, that they have the players and the manager for the
absolutely.
job. Yeah, those two things are not.
They've not
changed
doubt
for me.
No, they haven't changed. And Cavalier, he's got a good backroom staff with him, and he's certainly got the tools to work with.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that a lot of the managers for Sheffield Wednesday in particular have not had over the last decade.
You did though, didn't you?
Well, I had the tools. Yeah, I had the lowest budget. I think I had the lowest budget in the league, just about. But it is very, very difficult to handle for him. But I have to say, I still think they'll be in the race, though.
Yeah. Okay. Well, only top six was expected, and they're still just 2 points outside the top six. A second half is to come in 5 minutes. Christmas is coming, and people need a bit of fuel for the fire. Yeah.
I always say that the perfect book for the fire, if you have read it, and certainly it's got two uses. It's not a bad read, but if you really do desperately need to warm the fire up, this will last.
Oh, it'll burn long into the night.
Into the night.
Brian and I, a great pleasure writing that book. We'll remind you of it in the second half. Also, the double heart bypass operation, the circumstances and the warning. Rejoin us in 5. Brilliant. Okay. Great half.